Things I learned was that she had a very sophisticated way of minimizing any personal problems. I also learned that she tends to, well, there were a number of characteristics that were consistent with the eventual diagnoses, but some of the primary characteristics, and I'm going to try to condense 25 pages here.
Uh-oh, here we go. So, guys, viewer discretion is advised, but this is from the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. And you remember how I said that Amber Heard probably has BPD? Well, I mean, listen to this.
Were essentially externalization of blame, tending to have a lot of inner hostility that is...
Uh-oh, you mean like some traits that are very common of the modern woman, but taken to extremes because of certain psychological conditions? Hello and welcome to the heliosblog. My name is Helios, here for another reaction video. Again, if you're liking the channel, if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications, like the video. Please comment if you agree or disagree with my points. That's what the comment box is for. If you'd like me to comment on any specific video or article or post, maybe on Reddit, please send it to theheliosblog@gmail.com. All right, let's continue.
Is attempted to be controlled, a tendency to be very self-righteous, but to also deny that self-righteousness and to judge others critically against these sort of high standards for
rules for thee, but not for me.
Moral value, but also to deny doing that. Essentially, to claim that one is very non-judgmental and accepting, and yet very full of rage, really.
Sorry, this is the not sure if life is comedy or tragedy thing. Like, the guy literally marries a hot girl and then she turns out to be crazy and post-war and has rage. And almost certainly this woman, Amber Heard, has many past sexual partners as well. So it's just literally all of the problems of the modern world, 2022 dating, taken to the extreme due to psychological conditions.
And these aren't facts, but her scores essentially correlated, so they were consistent with other people who obtained these scores who have been shown through many studies to have these very specific traits. So externalization of blame, a lot of inner anger and hostility, sometimes that anger among these groups with similar scores, these people might have that anger kind of explode out at times. They tend to be very passive-aggressive.
Oh, you mean like Amber and her, you know, recording casually the arguments, trying to frame the guy, throwing a bottle so it cuts his finger open and all that kind of stuff? You mean that kind of thing? Yes, I would say that's consistent indeed. And it's also consistent with a world that benefits women in all things, including in court here. Like, I'll bet that before this sort of testimony, right, I'll bet that the crowd tends to be on the side of the woman, and it takes a lot of data, statistics, and a lot of information to jar people out of their first instinct, which is to support women, even if they are insane, even if they're causing arguments, even if they get so bad that they ruin your career and even cause you bodily harm.
They may be self-indulgent, very self-centered.
Like narcissists.
Could use manipulation tactics to try to get their needs met, very needy of attention.
Look at her expression. Amber's expression. She really doesn't like getting called out, which is that self-righteousness thing, right? It's the very thing that the psychologist was talking about. Look at that face. You cannot hide that disdain and the sheer dislike of the truth.
Acceptance, approval. They tend to distance people who are close to them. Initially, they may seem very charming. They're very socially sophisticated, actually. That was a major component on there. They have a capacity to kind of offer some of their faults, but in a way, but only the ones that people think of lightly and can all relate to. And so they can present as very fair and balanced, but in actuality, they really might be very judgmental of others and unaware of problems in their behavior and their thinking.
Right, so basically what she's saying is that the girl has an utter lack of ability to accept responsibility, has higher standards of others than she has of herself, and she externalizes the disrespectful, angry feelings in a rage that explodes out. Now, of course, most women are not as bad as women with actual psychological disorders, right? But in 2022 dating, women are favored and are even encouraged to behave in this way. You know, the strong, independent queen movement doesn't help people to be any less self-righteous, as it were. Okay, let's continue. Again, please, if you agree or disagree with the points I'm making, please leave a comment.
So after you provide the examination via the iPad, what do you do?
So once they've completed the test, you can have it scored by the computer immediately. It's a very, very complex test to interpret, but right away you get a list of what's called critical items, and these are just a couple of the items, the statements that are presented that are more clearly symptom-based, and I always follow up with the examinee. Some of these might have to do with suicide, some of them might have to do with other symptoms that you just like to get a little bit more information on, because sometimes an examinee might tell you they're completely fine when you're doing your interview with them and that they have no symptoms, and then when they take the test, it says that they're having trouble sleeping, or they struggle with nausea all the time, or they feel very anxious, and so you want to follow up on that.
What's a code type?
A code type, let me think of how to explain this very, very simply. So the main scales, and I keep referring to scales, these are just the main scores that come up on this test. We can refer to them as codes. And when I was saying that Ms. Hurd's scores could be compared to certain groups of people that had been researched before to obtain similar scores, the research has shown that certain people will have certain scores that kind of spike on this.
Right, I understand what she's getting at. What she's trying to do is she's trying to paint the picture that Amber has a very similar personality traits to people that have certain psychological disorders. I understand. That's what she's getting at here. And the questions on the test indicate that idea. So she's trying to basically prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the girl's crazy. Effectively, that's the moral of the story here. Okay, I'm not really sure when she gets to the point, but anyway, we're just gonna casually keep listening, and I'll keep commenting. Let's move on.
Okay, and so all of those traits that I was describing, those are traits that are found in these code types. So it means that score number two was high, and score number 6 was high. And so if we have those two scores were both high, then that's a 2-6 code type. And these code types...
What code type was Ms. Hurd?
Ms. Hurd had the clearest code type was 3-6, but then she also had some other code types that were less significant.
What characteristics are associated with a 3-6 code type?
So a 3-6 code type, a lot of that anger is expressed in this code type. There can be actually a lot of cruelty.
This is, oh god, sorry, a little bit of schadenfreude here for me, but anyway, anger and cruelty. So what that indicates is that a trained clinical psychologist, a trained clinical professional, has determined beyond a reasonable doubt, based on this test, that Amber has rage and cruelty. She's capable of the negative actions that are being described by Johnny. I understand very well what's being done here. This is trying to paint the picture that she on purpose tried to hurt the guy. She on purpose tried to damage his reputation. She didn't do it unintentionally. She did it very intentionally. I get it. That's what it seems like anyway.
People who are less powerful, actually, when you see this code type, you want to, if you can, to follow up with subordinates, co-workers, people who may have observed their behavior more closely. The 3-6 code type is very concerned with their image, very
narcissistic,
attention-seeking, very prone to externalizing blame to a point where it's unclear whether they can even admit to themselves that they do have responsibility.
Oh, Lord. Okay. Oh, yeah. So what this is sounding like, guys, this is sounding like BPD, like borderline personality disorder. They're totally unable to accept blame and responsibility to the point where you're not even sure if it's possible for them to accept blame. They almost have an externalized locus of control. Like they feel that life happens to them and nothing that they do actually affects this. It's they are an upstanding person and everything is everyone else's fault and they're just reacting to that.
In certain areas, a lot of suppressed and denied anger, but the anger is very present, will explode out, and a lot of issues in their close relationships.
Indeed. Very clearly, right? I've been considering what's going on here. It's very clearly something wrong with the close personal relationships. That's putting it very nicely.
How does Ms. Hurt's code type fit in with your overall opinion as to personality disorders?
Well, this might be an appropriate time to describe a little bit about these personality disorders, because I think what you'll hear.
I mean, Amber's expression is perfect for this. Like, look, you can see the anger and disdain on her face. This is her in her most controlled. She's trying to look good for the audience, and still she can't hide her inner rage and hostility. Literally, like you see in the title there. You can see it clear as day. It's there. She wants to explode. I can see it. Can you see it? Put me a comment if you agree or disagree with what I'm saying here.
Is that there's a lot of consistency there. So borderline personality disorder is a disorder of stability. It's instability, and it's instability in personal relationships. It's instability in their emotions. It's instability in their behavior, and it's instability in their sense of self and their identity.
And their identity, indeed. So guys, I've actually made a video on NPD. On BPD women, although I think she has NPD as well. And guys, you never want to be in a relationship with such a person. I mean, look, we literally have a living example of what happens if you get into a relationship. Of course, she's an extreme case, right? But many men have reported relationships with BPD women that lead to exactly this kind of situation. Extreme harm, psychological torment, torture, just a lot of bad stuff. Okay, let's continue here.
Identity. And that instability is really driven by this underlying terror of abandonment. So one of the key features also of this disorder, and all of it is like pistons of an engine kind of firing off and igniting one another. But when somebody is afraid of being abandoned by their partner or by anybody else in their environment and they have this disorder, they'll make desperate attempts to prevent that from happening. And those desperate attempts could be physical aggression, it could be threatening, it could be harming themselves. But these are behaviors that are usually very extreme and very concerning to the people around them. The anger is typically what, sadly, it's counteractive, right? So the thing these people fear most is being abandoned, but over time, the anger, the explosive anger that they show when somebody is needing space, or when somebody's really not doing anything wrong, because a lot of times they read into things that they perceive as being a slight to them or being somebody intending to harm them that actually isn't happening. They'll exaggerate it, and they'll explode. They'll react in this.
Uh-oh. So you're saying that the very behavior that she's doing is pushing away the person she doesn't want to lose. So I understand. So NPD creates inherent unstable relationships that are extreme and swingy. And I have read that many men that go into relationships with NPD women, they're not the same again. And NPD women are the ones that are likely to get you, literally in a court of law, in jail, facing serious bodily harm. Like it's a total disaster. And that this lady here is basically proving beyond a reasonable doubt that Amber has these traits shows us that she is very capable of the things that were being done. And men, please never, it doesn't matter how pretty she is, never get into a relationship with such a woman. It's extremely damaging to your life for this to be a thing. Please save yourself from a lifetime of hurt. Save yourself and avoid women like this. Please, for your own sake.
Heightened manner that is just exhausting for their partners. Oftentimes their
Indeed.
partners will try to make them happy at first and really allow themselves to be a punching bag, thinking that they can somehow solve
Sounds
this
like what Johnny
problem,
did.
somehow they can make this better, and eventually it just overwhelms them. Histrionic personality disorder is very
Before
similar.
we move on.
Okay.
Oh, she has histrionic personality disorder too? BPD and histrionic? Oh my god. Oh god. Oh lordy lord. Guys, I sincerely pray that you never have to deal with such a woman in your life. I really hope that you don't have to deal with it. I pray for you that this doesn't happen to you, because oh god, Johnny needs to get out. I mean, I think he is out now. I think so.
Are you familiar with the term emotional reactivity?
I am.
What is that?
So emotional reactivity is very common in the diagnosis. So essentially, like I said, there's instability in emotions. People with borderline personality disorder are often misdiagnosed as having bipolar disorder because they can be up and down. They can look very depressed, then they can look very elated, but these changes are happening within a matter of hours. Somebody with bipolar disorder, this is a clinical depression lasting days, weeks, a clinical mania where sometimes they even need to be hospitalized because they're so grandiose. They clear out their bank account and go to Vegas and spend it all. They're acting in some very bizarre ways. With borderline personality disorder, you're having these fluctuating moods constantly. And again, this hypersensitivity to being slighted or feeling offended, really driven by the fear that if you're offended or slighted, if the therapist comes in 2 minutes late, or if somebody shows up to dinner 2 minutes late, that they might be abandoning you. And
oh god, I can't even imagine being with a person that's that fragile, that's that like easy to hurt. That's kind of terrifying, actually. I can't even imagine the damage such a person could do to a, I mean, Johnny, of course, is maybe not the most well-adjusted person, right? But imagine the effect it could have to a normal, well-adjusted person who's attempting to have a relationship with them. It's just, man, please, don't deal with this. Oh, Lord. Okay, on we go.
it's not as if the borderline is considering themselves abandoned in that moment, but they just know that they have
They
this
fear it.
overwhelming emotion, And there are no attempts to control that emotion. There are no attempts to regulate it.
Oh,
So
that
if
means
they're
there's
in
a
the
problem
middle
with the
of
frontal lobe as well.
restaurant and they feel offended, they're going to start the fight. People are going to see it, or they might just start crying or break down, but they'll make a lot of accusations, and that reactivity is when you're going to see a lot of this escalation in the bizarre behavior. They can react violently, they can react aggressively, they will often physically prevent their partner from trying to leave if their partner wants to get space from all of this intense emotion, and oftentimes they will be abusive to their partners in these situations.
Oh, it's like, I understand what she's getting at. It's kind of like a baby. Like the baby doesn't want you to abandon it, and so it cries, or it right. It's any kind of behavior to keep the person from getting away from you because you fear abandonment. That's very terrifying. Like I don't know if anybody else here feels it, but I'm uncomfortable just listening to this. Imagine having to deal with this every day. The crazy moods, the reactivity, the bombastic, explosive arguments, throwing stuff, being physically violent, trying to, oh God, I can't even imagine what this would be like. This is torture.
Sometimes they'll physically restrain them from leaving and become injured that way, but also people with borderline personality disorder, it seems to be a predictive factor for women who implement violence against their partner.
Lordy.
And one of the most common tactics that they'll use is actually physically assaulting and then getting harmed themselves, but mostly we call this administrative violence. So essentially this is saying that they'll make threats using the legal system.
Oh, God.
They might say that they are going to file a restraining order or claim abuse, or they might do these things to essentially try to keep their partner.
Try to control them. Oh, God. So that means that women that are like this will actively try to marry you to control you, and then when you don't do as they want or when they feel slighted, they'll threaten the police on you, or oh, God. Oh, God. I wonder how many men have gotten into serious trouble over being with women like this. Now I'm really not surprised. Having read some articles on BPD myself, I'm really not surprised that basically everybody, in the comments, or that all of the advice related to dealing with BPD says to get away, to run as far and as fast as you can. That's terrifying. I can't even imagine having to deal with that.
In the moment, again, they're not consciously thinking, I'm going to keep my partner from leaving right now. They're just thinking, I can't stand this. I hate my partner. They went from idealizing to suddenly devaluing because of the hurt, and they'll do anything to express that big emotion of anger.
Your Honor, may we approach?
All right, yes, sir.
Okay, I mean, we covered BPD here. I think I'll make another video on the histrionic personality disorder. I think this lady does an amazing job. I think I'm going to make 2 videos here. So I'll end the video here, and then I'm going to do another video on the histrionic thing. Like, because this is actually a really good explanation of BPD. I'm going to just leave it on my channel. I think this is fantastic. So anyway, again, if you agree or disagree with my points, or if you want to comment on this, honestly, she did most of the work. So if you want to comment on what the doctor here says, please. Anyway, make sure to, if you're liking the content, if you're liking the channel, please make sure to leave me a sub, hit the bell for notifications, and thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching my channel. Please remember to do all of the following. Like the video for the algorithm. Comment on the video. I respond to all comments and I'll give you a heart. Subscribe and hit the bell so you can see my content on your feed. Check out all of my content on other platforms. It spreads the reach of the channel. YouTube, bit.ly/Helios YouTube. Rumble, bit.ly/Helios Rumble. My blog is realheliosblog.com. My podcast, bit.ly/Helios Podcast. My Patreon, patreon.com/theheliosblog. You can also support the show at bit.ly/Helios Donations, and buy my books at bit.ly/heliosbooks. Thank you so much for all of your support.